everyone, and welcome back. We're on chapter 4 today, and we will be returning to Aster's anguish. Also, look! I have a microphone now! It's making me really happy. So, let us begin. Chapter 4. Aster. Dark, menacing shapes flit around me, blocking my vision and hemming me in until I can't move. I push and shove, trying to move them away so I can see, so I can find my brother. There. Through a gap between two of the figures, I see him, struggling against his own restraints. His mouth is stretched open wide in a scream, but I can't hear a thing. I surge forward, darting around and between the figures as they seek to reach out and grab me. No one can stop me from reaching Adyen. Nobody. A knife flashes through the air. I try to scream, to warn Adyen before it's too late, but my voice won't make a sound either. He can't hear me. He won't. No. I keep running, but I'm too slow. I will always be too slow. Blood rises up from the place where the blade enters skin. Slow motion. Streams and beads of the deepest red. His life force. I'm still running, but the dark shapes have closed in around me again and I'm going nowhere. I'm not getting nearer. Instead, they drag me back, away from my brother, and however much I fight, they won't listen. They don't stop. The darkness closes in and Adyen disappears. I find myself falling inside a void too black for words. I awoke quickly, shaking as I sat bolt upright in bed. Sweat trickled down my face. I stared intently into the dimness of my room, even though I knew everything in it. After the dream, everything looked strange and slightly menacing. Burying my face in my hands, I tried to push back the images crowding into my head, the real alongside the imagined, but they were burned into my mind, my soul. Silence pressed down on me, a void where my brother had once been. Why did this have to happen? I inhaled, and my breath caught as my chest tightened. A lump solidified in my throat, and I couldn't breathe. Nearly falling, I tumbled out of bed, padding across the room and pulling open the door. Adyen. Adyen. The main room didn't hold much light, but I could tell the money no longer sat on the table. Talia must have put it away before she came to bed. She still slept in the bed pressed against the opposite wall from mine, and she hadn't stirred as far as I knew. Crossing the room, I wrapped my hand around the handle of the door opposite my bedroom. It creaked slightly as I pulled it open, and a familiar smell wafted towards me as I entered. Adyen's bedroom. His scent lingered here. The pain in my chest loosened slightly, and I dragged in a shallow inhale. I picked up a candle from the small table beside the door and lit it, sending a faint, warm glow around the room. The curtains, a dark blue that Talia had picked up and put at all the windows to lend a warmer air to our living space, fluttered slightly in a soft breeze. He'd left the window cracked open. The lumpy bed Adyen claimed he liked sat underneath the window, the blankets rumpled and piled in a heap at the end. A lantern sat on the table beside the bed, holding down a piece of paper that bore a rough sketch. I sank down on the edge of the bed to take a closer look. It was a rough drawing of our parents. I'd barely known them. They'd both died of the disease when we were 4, leaving us to fend for ourselves on the streets of Broton. The Broken City. I found the name fitting for all that went on inside it. The features of those distant people were vague, almost no defining features that I could remember them by. My mother used to wear a scarf over her thick, curly hair, a scarf that I could remember with undeniable clarity. I still had it. It was blue, with a pattern of orange and green running over the thin, smooth fabric. The tasseled ends were woven with tiny glass beads. Am I sentenced to have just such a thing to remember Adyen by? A tiny scrap of the thousands of memories I had spent with my brother. My twin. Where are you? I set aside the drawing and stared around his room again. He had a bookshelf, mostly empty except for a few books he'd scavenged and a few spare sets of clothing. Some extra ammunition for his pistol. I stood up to examine the books. A tattered volume of poetry, an almanac dated from over 10 years ago, 1 or 2 political history books, and an unmarked tome I held no interest in. Bowing my head, I listened to the silence in the room. I tried to imagine that Adyen lay in his bed, snoring lightly as he slept, but the quiet was too oppressive for that to become quite real. He's gone, Aster, I told myself harshly. There's no use tricking yourself into thinking otherwise. The pain crashed down on me. It pulled my chest tight, cutting off my breath, and a stab of nausea prickled in my stomach. Something had been ripped from me, something vital, and there was no getting it back. I sank down to the floor, gasping. How could this hurt so much? Aster. I looked up quickly, but only Talia stood in the doorway. Her hair hung rumpled from sleep, and her eyes were ringed red from crying. I knew that she mourned Adyen as well, but not as much as I did. You all right? Talia asked in a fragile voice. I shook my head vacantly. Nothing was all right. Not in a world where I had lost the one thing dearest to me. I had no words to explain the way it felt to once upon a time have a twin, the closest person in the world, and then to have him ripped away in an instant. No other kind of pain could ever come close to that. The silence, the void was the worst part. Talia carefully came to sit down next to me. I didn't move or respond, too distracted by the tightness that kept me from breathing. She placed a hand on my back and rubbed it gently. I found the sensation soothing, but not particularly helpful. Do you think you can eat something? Talia asked softly after a moment. She didn't try to comfort me or tell me that things would be okay. We both knew they wouldn't. She just asked about something mundane. Deep down, I appreciated her for that. The comfort always felt too cheap to me. It did nothing. I didn't think I could eat. The emotions and the nausea rolling around within me were too much. Okay, Talia finally said. I'll get you some water. I didn't respond to that either. I didn't have the room to include feelings about water. I just sat there as she rose and limped out of the room. Her leg had been injured a year ago, back when Adyen and I had first met her. Adyen had helped save her life, and while there had been only so much he could do, Talia was indebted to him. But Adyen was no longer here, and that was something I could never get used to, not even after 1,000 years.